What if I told you the Viking Age didn't begin with glory, but with blood spilled on the altar of a Christian monastery? In the year 793, terrified monks watched the destruction of the Lindisfarne Monastery on the coast of England. It wasn't a typical raid. It was the beginning of a new era, marked by men who believed that dying in battle was a direct bridge to the warrior's paradise, Valhalla. But what guided these northern seafarers wasn't just a thirst for conquest. It was a deep faith in gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya, who demanded courage, sacrifice, and sometimes something far worse. And what you're about to hear now isn't legend. It's the real account of a man who saw everything with his own eyes. The Arab diplomat Ahmad ibn Fadlan in the 10th century was sent on a diplomatic mission to the banks of the Volga River. But what he found there, in a Rus Viking camp, was a funeral spectacle that seemed ripped from an ancient nightmare. The body of a Viking leader was being prepared for the final journey, and with him, a slave. According to the account, she volunteered to die with her master, but as he observed the ritual, Fadlan realized that free will was a concept extremely flexible within that culture. The young woman was taken to a series of tents, where men said their farewells in what he describes as a ceremonial manner. Many scholars interpret that this goodbye included systematic abuse, justified as part of the ritual. After that, she was drugged, numbed by unknown substances. She could barely stay conscious, but the worst was yet to come. In the center of the camp, in front of silent warriors and priests in a trance, the slave was placed next to her master's body. Two women, known as the Angels of Death, held her down firmly, and while a priest chanted to Odin, she was strangled and then stabbed in the heart. All of this to ensure the dead chieftain had company and status in the afterlife. Can you imagine a culture in which the value of a human being was so intertwined with another's fate that even death became a sacred duty? For the Vikings, this wasn't an isolated practice. Blood was more than life. It was a sacred offering, a link between the world of men and the realm of the gods. And if you think human sacrifice was an act of pure savagery, you might be looking through the wrong lens. In the Viking view, cruelty wasn't the goal, it was the price. The price of fertility, of protection, of victory in times of war. These rituals had a name. They were known as Blóts, and they weren't just symbolic ceremonies. We're talking about real, regular, ritualized events recorded by sources of the time. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from Adam of Bremen, an 11th century chronicler. He describes the Temple of Uppsala in Sweden as a place where, every 9 years, a grand event took place. 9 men, 9 horses, 9 creatures of different species were sacrificed to the gods. Their bodies were hanged in sacred groves, suspended from branches as living or dead, offerings to the unseen gaze of Odin, Freyr, and Thor. But it wasn't a dark and silent ritual. It was a festival, a feast, a celebration of the eternal cycle of death and renewal. While some died beneath the trees, others celebrated around altars, eating, drinking, singing, and that's where archaeology comes in. Excavations at ritual sites have uncovered graves with human remains mixed with animal bones, broken weapons, and feast utensils. It wasn't a coincidence. It was intentional. The gods gave, but also expected something in return. But the truth is, not all blood rituals were meant for the gods. Some had a single purpose: revenge. To them, angering a deity could be dangerous, but betraying a man of honor, that was unforgivable. And among the Vikings, there was an execution so brutal that even today scholars wonder if it really happened. Its name is whispered with discomfort to this day: Blood Eagle. Picture the scene where a traitor is captured. He's not just a common criminal, but someone who broke an oath, dishonored his lineage, or betrayed a king. For him, a simple death wouldn't be enough. The sentence, a ritual of vengeance turned into a spectacle. According to Norse sagas, the man was tied face down. His back was slowly and cruelly cut open, exposing the ribs as if they were the feathers of a bird. The lungs were pulled out and left there visible, inflating with his final breaths, like wings of blood. This was the punishment reserved for traitors. Death alone wasn't enough. The body had to become a symbol, but did this practice really exist? Or was it a literary invention, created to amplify the terror and glorify Viking justice? The truth is, no direct physical evidence has been found. No skeleton with ribs spread like wings. No indisputable archaeological record, but written sources insist. Sagas like the Orkneyinga and the Saga of Ragnar Lodbrok describe the ritual in almost graphic detail, and even more intriguing, these stories circulated across different regions and centuries. Whether it was real or not is a question that still lingers like a fog over Norse history. But what no one disputes is that terror was part of the Viking language. And sometimes that terror didn't come from what they did to their enemies, but from what they became in battle. Unlike many other peoples and civilizations of the time, they entered the battlefield without armor, roaring like beasts with blood in their eyes. They felt no pain. They were no longer themselves. And many swore they were no longer human. These were the so-called Berserkers, men, or were they creatures, who terrified enemies and fascinated allies. They didn't just fight, they embodied the very spirit of war. According to the Norse sagas, Berserkers were sacred warriors who fought as if possessed by bears or wolves. Some were called Ulfhednir, the wolves of the battlefield. Others wore bear pelts and charged into combat as if life and death were one and the same. But what turned them into these unstoppable creatures? Madness, magic, or something even deeper? Modern theories try to decode the phenomenon of Berserker gang, the state of uncontrollable rage that overtook these warriors. Some scholars believe in the use of psychoactive plants, like the Amanita muscaria mushroom, with its hallucinogenic and unpredictable effects. Others point to Hyoscyamus niger or henbane, known for inducing violent delusions. But not everyone believes the explanation lies in chemistry. Some say the Berserkers used ancient techniques of rhythmic meditation, sensory deprivation, and isolation, similar to shamanic practices. In doing so, they created a kind of war trance, where identity vanished and the body became pure instinct. Some accounts say that after battle, Berserkers had to be isolated. Can you imagine looking into a man's eyes and realizing he's no longer there? With the arrival of Christianity, these sacred warriors came to be seen as living blasphemy, demonic beasts. And so, the practice was banned in the 11th century, but their legend never disappeared. After everything I've shown you here today, there are signs that, in certain moments, some Vikings went even further. In times of war, or under the cutting cold of an endless winter, what separates the warrior from the animal? Imagine this: you're walking through an ancient cave. Among animal bones and fragments of pottery, you find human remains, broken bones with marks of precise cuts. And the question that echoes among archaeologists and historians is, did the Vikings eat each other? Excavations at sites like Derbyshire, in the United Kingdom, have uncovered human skeletons with clear signs of dismemberment and knife marks. The most intriguing part: these remains are associated with Viking contexts. But this practice, as macabre as it may seem, wasn't isolated in the ancient world. In various Indo-European cultures, ritualistic cannibalism had a specific purpose: to absorb the enemy's strength, spirit, and courage, turning flesh into power. It was an extreme form of respect and domination, because devouring someone wasn't just about defeating them, it was about integrating them into yourself. Icelandic sagas also include indirect, discreet, but revealing mentions, stories of battles where bodies were torn apart not just by fury, but by hunger, or by something dangerously close to a ceremony. And that's where the question arises, one that still divides scholars today. Were these acts ritualistic, or simply desperate? Life in Northern Europe, especially during the harshest winters, was a constant struggle for survival. Intense cold, depleted supplies, prolonged sieges. When food ran out, one choice remained: die or consume the dead. Maybe it was a bit of both, and everything you've heard so far may sound quite barbaric. But to the Vikings, it was sacred and cultural. It was all part of a spiritual logic in which the body, soul, and fate were inseparable. But can we truly understand how these northern men and women thought? Or are we still looking at them through the filtered lens of our own era, without realizing how much of their culture we still carry in our stories, beliefs, and symbols? And now I want to hear from you. Which of these traditions do you think is the most barbaric and violent? Leave your comment below and hit like if you enjoyed this content. If you want to keep watching the most shocking war crimes ever recorded in ancient history, click right here on the screen and check it out.